work for. It's like a flat structure, flat hierarchy. So, um, like I lead pen test, and we have like five co-founders. Four of the five are all still technical, do pen testing with us. Nobody has egos, which I appreciate dearly. Working with insanely intelligent people that don't hold egos can really help you grow as a pen tester. Um, so we had a client at one point that was building like a private Ethereum infrastructure to handle some settlement. Um, and at that point, since I wanted to learn more about Ethereum. I paper handed Ethereum like at $9, like sold bought 10 Ethereum in like
Wow, bro,
2015,
$9?
2014, and it was like $9 an ETH, and then yeah, and then I sold it like a week later for a $5 loss.
My
Because
God, man.
I didn't
Oh
get it
my
back then.
God.
I mean, I still held Ethereum. I've held Ethereum and BTC over the long term like that, but like it's fun to just go way back on your sex accounts and see what what you were doing way back then. So I've been through a couple bull markets and bear markets, and just pretty much just lose my wallet during a bear market and don't think about things historically, and which has been fine and always worked out. Um, but so getting into Ethereum, like 2021, was I just got into crypto big time after I'd started getting into like equities and stuff and trading that, and then was looking into like running bots and doing day trading, and then getting into machine learning, regression learning to do auto trading. And I just realized like people have this notion that if you run a bot, you can just like leave it alone and it'll just do its thing and make you money perpetually. And it's so far from the truth, because really, like, you need to be like babysitting that thing and watching it because it's holding all your money. And if you don't have right risk controls, you can get mega wrecked doing that stuff. And with me already having a full-time job and having a family and stuff, it was like I don't have the time to get into all of that botting. um so then I started like getting into like crypto, and I was like, I'm gonna get a lay of the land and see like what are all the different cryptos out there. So I bought some Cosmos, I bought some Solana, I bought some Cardano, bought Polkadot. I kind of just I bought a lot of the big newer trending alts, the especially ones that were written in Rust, and just real forward facing crypto tokens, and just kind of used them all. I didn't buy big amounts, but I just bought a little bit of each and wanted to see what like the staking experience was like. What are their wallets like? Is there a governance mechanism? If so, how does that work? And just really looked at all of them and evaluated them. And at the end, Polkadot, just the way that they handle staking, how it's like automatically claimed for you, so you're not having to even execute transactions. Anybody in the round can make the claim and rebond your stake. How it was automatically compounded was just like, wow, I don't have to sit there and babysit this and claim and then restake and pay all these transactions. It'll just work for me. Not to mention the fact that the big thing too was that Gavin Wood, who wrote the Yellow Paper and Solidity and the first C++ implementation, and pretty much like everything about Ethereum, went to build Polkadot. So that was a big driving factor, just knowing that genius was behind this next evolution of blockchain. I wanted to kind of put my horse in that race.
Do you,
So, oh, go ahead.
do you still hold that view that Polkadot holds a nice future for the blockchain and everything?
Yes, definitely. I think that they're thinking like 10 years ahead. Like when Gavin was building Ethereum, he was kind of thinking 10 years ahead already in like the space. Um, it was hard to see the vision at that point in time. Like people didn't understand it because it was so evolutionary. I think, and now that we've almost had 10 years or so, it's like people see the vision, but it takes a while. And I think Polkadot's a lot in the same. Just the infrastructure that they're setting up. Uh, I mean, like they've already solved sharding. They've already solved all these issues that Ethereum hasn't even begun to deal with yet. And that's why, I mean, because the parity was like responsible for the client. I mean, they were deep in Ethereum. And that is Gavin's baby, his original baby. For him to leave that to go build this new thing because he realized just where Ethereum was, it wouldn't be able to scale like he wanted it to. I mean, saying that, I'm still super bullish on Ethereum. I think it's a great freaking product, and like with all this L2 adoption and stuff, I think it'll eventually get there. With the sharding. So I'm bullish on both the technologies, to be honest.
Nice.
And Polkadot has integrated the Frontier palette, which gives them full EVM interoperability, like we see with like Moonbeam. And actually, it's like extending the EVM because now you can make substrate calls from the EVM and make EVM calls from substrate, and you can use like the proxy palettes and substrate. And I mean, it's just like the stuff that's going to start happening here with XTM um, and substrate. I think are going to really blow people's minds.
That's really cool. I really love the Polkadot project. Sometimes I feel that parity is not that approachable of a company, but maybe that's part of the strategy. I was part of the PBA myself, so I knew how much work they were doing. I saw all the cool things inside. So I'm definitely bullish too. I hope that we start getting some momentum, more retail. And I wanted to go back to the part that you said that you worked with a lot of really cool and really smart pen testers. What are the characteristics of these individuals? Like, it's purely technical, they have like a different vision when approaching security.
Yeah, they are all very unique and eccentric people. I mean, they all come from like a wide berth of backgrounds. Like I work with one guy, he used to be a chef. Another guy used to be a geologist. They're not necessarily classically trained in security, but they have spent years now doing it, and like they just are very curious. I think curiosity is probably the most common factor. Asking a lot of questions, um, not being afraid to be wrong about things. Like, it's okay to admit mistakes, or to be humbled. If you ask a question or you're wrong about something. Yeah, I think those are the important qualities.
Nice.
And just being diligent.
That's really cool. And something else that I wanted to ask you is regarding the security space itself, because you were here 2 years ago. What's changed?
Oh man, I think when I got into the Securium Epoch Zero course, I think Dan Guido from Trail of Bit said that there was less than like 200 security auditors in the world at that point in time for you know smart contracts, like Solidity smart contracts and stuff. So I mean that number's just blown out of the water at this point. Um, with Securium, I think Rajiv allowed like the first 512 people to sign up for that Epoch Zero class, got into it, um, and it was like the top 128 that went on. Funny thing, so like when I was building that mind map, I'd like asked Rajiv. I was like, are you gonna release the content all at once? And he was like, no, I'm gonna piecemeal it. Every week we'll get the content. And I was telling him, like, I was trying to make this mind map thing, and I wanted to, like, coalesce all the content together and make it linked and referenced, and people could add it. Like, I explained my vision. He was like, "That's cool, but I'm not releasing all the content at once. You're just gonna have to do this each week." So I ended up, I wrote a parser that would take his blogs that he'd publish on Medium, and parse them into better Markdown. Um, and like I hated he used like Comic Sans on his slides, like just to be a jerk. I don't know why he did that. But like, yeah, like you kind of like there's a lot of characters and stuff that don't look right, or they like it's hard to read them, and so especially like I'm trying to think anybody that has like any sort of disability or anything, they should still be able to learn and stuff. So if they have like sight impairments or anything, it's good to be able to like have different ways to consume this content. And so that was kind of the vision for the mind map, and just to as a public good and just to contribute back myself, being new to the space. If you're trying to grow your presence out there, putting out any sort of information that can help others learn, that's how you leave an impact. By just sharing that information. I know it's kind of a big debate right now of people like charging for content and stuff. And I don't hate on that. I mean, like, get in
Yeah.
where you fit in. If that's your hustle, more power to you. That's not my style though. I think whatever we put out in the universe, we'll get back eventually. 10 times that, in some way. But I think if you're trying to grow your presence out there, writing little Twitter threads, putting out blogs, writing GitHub repos, anything you can do, share that around to people. I think like we we as humans, we try to solve the enigma of like how do we live forever, and I think the impact we leave on each other is how we do that. You know, um,
Very nice. I want to ask you something else too. On Ethereum, we have all these DSLs now. So we have ETK, Viper, Solidity. I want to know your view on Viper specifically.
um, I mean, it's cool. I think it's good to have different options, having diversity out there for different clients. I haven't really used Viper myself, but I think, I get that question too, like, what IDE do you prefer? What, operating system, are you using? And like, I just use the best tool for the job. If I was working on something that was Python, I would use Python based stuff, or whatever. I'm not
Awesome.
really like part of one camp or another, but generally, I mean, I use Solidity. I'm really digging. I think Huff's really cool. I'm glad to see Viper. I think there's going to be some um, cool stuff coming.
Do you think that, because in my view, Huff, I like Huff and everything, but I feel that developers shouldn't be messing up with bytecode. That's the compiler's job. What's your view on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like it goes back to what I was just saying. Use the right tool for the job. Huff's more for like MEB contracts and stuff that needs to be super optimized, where you're not going to have just an NFT developer, in it. Probably, it's going to be for a specific purpose that they're using something like Huff.
Awesome, awesome. And bro, I want to know the story about the dude in your profile picture.
Okay, so that's Mudge, and me being kind of older, this goes back to when I was young. And Mudge went to Congress in like 1998. Well, it wasn't just him; he was part of a hacker collective called the Law. His real name's Peter Zatko. You may have heard of him recently because he's also the Twitter whistleblower that released a document of all the spying and stuff that was going on inside of Twitter and their issues. But in 1998, Mudge and the Loft crew all went to Congress and did a really famous talk, um, gave testimony about insecurities in national infrastructure. Uh, Specifically, they talked about like MS Chat V2 weaknesses, which were then like severely exploited about 10 years later. Um, but they all went as pseudonymous identities. It was kind of it was the first time that I'm aware of that somebody went to Congress under a pseudonymous identity. Uh, and their plaque, like if you pull up a picture of it, their plaques, they all have like Well Pond, Mudge, Kingpin, like they did, so it's just kind of a nod. And that um, was kind of a turning point to how hackers and security people were viewed because back in the 90s and even early 2000s, um, the term hacker was had a very negative connotation to it. You couldn't do anything without getting serious trouble. You couldn't even report, like, if you knew a vulnerability and you wanted to help a company and you tried to report it to them, like, you had serious exposure. There was no such thing as responsible disclosure. There was like, like, yeah, I mean, you risk serious jail time just to help people. Um, and so Mudge was very instrumental in changing that perspective at the federal government level. Um, and I actually know the guy that hired Mudge when for the first time in the government. Like my friend was working in a three-letter agency, and they were the first. They knew Mudge through the Loft, and said, "Hey, we want your help to come secure these systems." And got Mudge in and started working for the government. Mudge later ended up running DARPA, which is an arm of the Department of Defense, and was instrumental in um, making the program a lot more efficient and giving out grants.
That's
So it was like
so
you could speed run a grant process. Sorry.
he went to work for the bad guy. I mean, in a sense, right? There's a little bit of a philosophy thing in there, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think the apparatus of the U.S. government does try to do some good, depending. I mean, DARPA at least. I shouldn't say the whole U.S. government, but there are a lot of important things that have been developed out of DARPA. If you look at its history, um, including the internet.
Nice. That's very
So,
nice.
I mean, you just have to kind of take the good with the bad in some respects. But I like to think that while he was there, he was probably driving a mission of being good and doing right. And he was very successful, and then went on and worked for Google and Stripe, and then went to work for Twitter, and that was when um, he ended up filing a whistleblower complaint, and was I think they fired him over that, which that whistleblower is quite interesting if you haven't read that yet.
One question that I have for you also is when you had the first idea that you could hack things, was that as a kid, like messing up with some configuration file? You tried to search that like professionally, you went to do some course. How did you got really like into the security space?
Okay, so I was like 12 or 13 and had dial-up internet. Um, my mom was a teacher, and so we had like free internet through the school system. But I just wanted AOL so I could chat with friends and stuff. Like back in the day, the internet was AOL in a lot of respects. At least when you were a little kid. And I couldn't find an AOL chat because I didn't have AOL. We just had basic dial-up. So I found some other chat portal. Back then, like most of the chats were HTML based, so you would have to refresh the page to get the conversation. But I found one that had a multi-client support, so it supported JavaScript, Java, and HTML. Um, and funny enough, the actual client was called iChat, So it was iChat.com when it was like like an application server that a company could just drop this device and get a chat environment. And the underlying protocol to this was actually like an IRCD, so like slash commands would work. Um, and somebody in the channel in this, I found a search engine. So there was a search engine back in the day called Snap.com that had this product, had this iChat product that I found. And and somebody there showed me that if you sent, I think it was like 256 semicolons, you would could if you sent that to somebody in a DM, it would crash their client and kick them offline. Um, and so I didn't know at the time. I didn't understand that was like a buffer overflow that was crashing the client. But that was kind of like my first peek behind the curtain of what can be done. And we got really interested in this chat client. And so, like some of the other friends that we were into, like, finding things about it, we found the documentation for it. Then we found another login portal that allowed us to log in as a guest. And so one day, like I see my friend logged in as a guest, but it's his regular username, and I'm like, wait a minute, you just like typed in your username and hit log in as guest, and it lets you. And he's like, yeah, and I was like, I wonder what happens when I do admin, and it let me in. It just basically like allowed you to forge cookies, and so it let me log in as a guest as the admin user, which made me authority over the whole server. And so immediately the first thing I did was use shout command to send the boot to kick everyone out of the server. And and so yeah, so like I ended up. I mean, I was like 12 or 13. This was probably like at midnight or something. So I just like gave a bunch of my friends admin on the server and went to bed. And the next day, the website was offline. They were down for like a week, uh, patching and fixing um, that issue. But that was like my first like, holy crap, this is cool, you know. And like a lot of those friends, they were, kind of like frenemies, I guess, because like we were all like got into Visual Basic programming, and we were making like little hack bots for these different chat clients and stuff. And like one of them would be like, "Oh, hey, I made a new booter for this program, downloaded," and it was like really like malware. It was like back then they were using like a French Trojan called Sockets to Trois. And so I quickly like figured that out, and then learned about like honeypots, and then started like baiting the Sockets to Trois honeypot, and then back orifice was another one, and sub seven. And so there were like honeypots you could use for those, and got into like honeybotting people, and just that whole space was
It's really
really kind of
crazy.
what set me off years ago. Um, you know,
Sounds really fun, man.
and so yeah, that's I've just been ever since then.
One, qu-
Um,
one.
and then how I got into like security professionally, I in high school got labeled as a hacker in a business class that I was in, because I didn't do anything, but the tech was just scared of me, and because I like would download games on the network, like way back when, and he just didn't like me and didn't like that some kid was like trying to tell him to fix vulnerabilities in his network. So they like banned me and kicked me out of this class. And eventually we had to go to the superintendent of the district because we were like, you guys have no evidence. There's like no logs. You don't have any screenshots. You don't have anything of me doing anything because I didn't do anything. Like, you guys have to fix this. And so they ended up giving me a class at the district office to like work on this website, but it was really just like to keep me out of the way. But I ended up proving myself to my teacher and my boss at the time. They ended up hiring me as a web developer. They created the first like web developer role in the district. Had to get board approval. Brought me in and ended up keeping me there for. I was like a developer for like 3 years. Ended up moving over into like network administration. Ran a bunch of large networks for this school district. Um, and had a mutual friend that was also into hacking and stuff. And he kept like he was doing it like privately consulting on his side, and kept trying to get me to go over with him. And I was like, no, you don't have, I need like insurance and 401k. Like I can't just go be out there. Um, but eventually he got hired by a company and wanted to grow the North America division. So he ended up recruiting me eventually to become a pen tester. Um, and I've just been pen testing ever since then.
Awesome, bro. I have a question, something that comes to my mind all the time. Seems that some websites today are pretty impossible to deface, like anything hosted on Wix, anything hosted on a AWS server, like if you're accessing it straight from the URL, because I know you can screw the DNS route. Tell me a little bit about it. Like how do hackers deal with these massive infrastructures?
You mean like just defacing stuff,
So
or
yeah, like I just want to fix it. Just want to put like some frog, on the website, and it seems to me that it's pretty hard to do if you're hosting something on Wix or if you're doing something, on these major players.
yeah, I mean, it's really going to depend on like how you're hosting and distributing that stuff, right? Like any of the bigger companies are using CDNs, like content delivery networks, that are pushing, the static content to the edge of the network so that clients can access that information further. I mean, there's different cache poisoning attacks and stuff, uh, but that's you're gonna need like a multitude of attacks there, like and some sort of like XSS along with a cache poisoning attack to be able to get some sort of code execution on the client user to be able to deface or modify the site. But I think like cache poisoning are probably the most common new things now to um,
I
you know
see. Makes
manipulate
sense.
content, at least for like CDNs and stuff like that.
Makes sense. And coming from the Web2 security space, how did the EVM fit in your head? Like, did you understand the bytecode straight away? How did the EVM security, how did a reentrance look for you? It was interesting, that was easy to understand.
Yeah, I mean, it's all pretty intuitive. It's a lot of same parallels. I think that there are definitely, there's uniqueness to the EVM side because you have like the whole like economic exploits and stuff that you're not going to see like in a traditional application stack, really. Um, so that's really interesting, and I think is what kind of piqued my interest too. Is just having that well, that and like the composability of it. I would say.
I want to know the story of how you became a legend on AT&T.
Oh, okay. How I became God on AT&T. So yeah, this is a funny story, and it was totally by accident. Um, but like this is like a throwback to the old days, like the old hacker days. Three character usernames are like coveted in most systems. Like AOL, a lot of people would like just brute force the character user credentials so that they could get like really short usernames in that system. Um, and so whenever I like find a login for something or I like create account and it's like, oh, enter in a username, a lot of times I'll pick God because it's both a three character screen name, and it's funny to think that God would have an account at some of these companies. And so I was an AT&T customer, AT&T wireless customer, and this was years ago, like 2006, 2007, about. Um, and I found some like deep sign up form deep down inside of AT&T's website that allowed me to create a username. And so I chose God, of course, because it's funny. And then went to bed and didn't really think of it. And then a bit later, I started getting text messages from people um, that were praying to God, like making prayers, like God, please. grant me, and I totally forgot I had set this username. And so I was just like really confused, like, and this was back in the day when you would get charged for text messaging, right? So, like you would buy, I think it was like $20, and you'd get like 800 text messages, right? That you could send or receive. And so I started getting all these text messages. I'd get them like all hours of the day and night. It didn't matter. I'd be like sleeping and just getting text messages of people praying, God grant me strength, God help me through this trouble. And I was just like, what's going on? I started replying to these people like, what did you type in? And they're like, I just typed God in the two box. Like I just typed out D in the two box. And like I called AT&T, called their office of the president, was like, you guys have some issue. I'm getting everybody's prayers. This isn't right. And they're like, no, it's just spam. Ignore it. And I'm like, no, I'm calling the people and texting them back. And they're saying, we're just praying to God. And so they like let me open a ticket number. And so I just started like, because it was annoying me at that point, like, getting overage usages and getting blown up all hours of the day and night on these. And eventually, like, I just started texting the people that were sending me these, and was like, "Here's the office of the president account number. Like, I'm getting your private contents, your private messages. Like, you may want to contact them and say stop sending my private messages to somebody else." But apparently, I figured out, and it didn't dawn on me until one time, because with text messages, you can email through text message. So in the two box, if you type somebody's email address and then send them a text with like a picture or something, it'll actually get delivered to their email. There's like a gateway routing there. Um, and it hit me because one day I did that. I sent an email through text, and when it delivered, it gave me the email address of god@text.att.net. And I was like, holy shit, this is why I am getting all of these text messages from prayers. But it was crazy. It was crazy to me that there are people out there that see, that think that they can talk to God through a piece of technology. It was kind of mind bending for me. And eventually they fixed it, to the point, because what was happening is, uh, when you would type a name in AT&T system, if you didn't have the at text.att.net on it, it would just add it on. Like they have like search domains inside their network. And so when somebody would write God in the two box, it would just add at text.att.net to the message and send it on and deliver it to me. And so that's why I was getting. Eventually, they fixed that, so it wouldn't just route to me anyway. But up until last year, when I left AT&T, that email address did still work. So you could still, up until last year, could text me at that god@text.att.net, but no more. It's finally gone since I left them because they were sucking.
Since we're talking about AT&T, you're also doing pen testing in there or doing some sort of security analysis. And did you saw any interesting attack their network?
Uh, I'm sorry. No, no, I don't. I don't like, unless the company is through my employer.
Ah,
I'm
okay,
not just into
okay, okay,
randomly stuff. No.
okay.
Yeah.
So what about your overall career? Did you ever find some interesting finding or hack that you saw, like something that was really eye-opening for you?
Um. Oh yeah. I mean, a lot, but they've all been through my company. But yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, like, I can talk in some vague stuff. In a vague sense, but yeah. So we do a lot of like big financial industry, companies that deal with PCI. PCI is the payment card industry. Um, if you are transmitting or handling credit card numbers at all, um, there's very specific guidelines that you have to abide by um, to maintain that certification. And so, as part of that process, these companies have to do penetration tests, And so the companies we work with, they're quite large. So like our pen tests are usually like 6 to 8 weeks on average. Um, and they're usually multi-component and multi-context. Um, so a lot of the times we'll have like say 3 different scenarios where you'll be a scenario of just like dropped inside of their corporate network, internal network, where you're like, in the same subnet as a secretary or just some random mo on the floor, right? And then they'll give you another context that's inside of a jump box. Jump box or bastion host are often used to pivot from like a non-trusted corporate internal network to a more trusted zone, like a PCI zone or something like that. And so you'll find these a lot in environments. Um, and what they'll say is like, okay, we'll put you in the corporate zone. And if you can't get from the corporate zone inside, we will, after a few days, we'll put you inside. So as a pen tester, you obviously want to not make them move you at all, and you just move yourself. And so, and being able to do that inside of a large corporate network can be kind of tricky. Um, and understanding kind of how access controls flow through an environment. Uh, so, um, what, like, for one example, what I ended up doing was for their Bastion host, they used Windows RDP. They had the systems pretty well segmented, or pretty well firewalled. The only thing that they would allow inbound to the Bastion host was RDP. That you couldn't communicate over RPC or SMB or anything like that. You could only RDP to the system. But the fatal flaw in their infrastructure was that their RDP Bastion hosts were tied to their corporate domain, their corporate Active Directory domain. So if an attacker was able to compromise their corporate Active Directory domain, they could then go back and modify the security on those Bastion hosts to grant me access. And so that's what we ultimately did was I attacked their corporate domain. I actually they had on the RDP session they also had two-factor auth configured on it. So I created a malicious group policy in their environment that could only be seen by those machines. And then the one account that I'd compromised and waited for replication to occur, and it basically disabled the multi-factor auth on the servers for me. I was able to just log into them at that point. And then in Windows with terminal servers, you can steal someone's session. You can steal their terminal server session if you're admin on the system. You just basically start a service. You create a service and start it, and it will switch your context. So we waited for another user to just disconnect from their session, and then we stole their terminal session, which had them logged into their crown jewels. So uh, that was one of the more fun attacks I've done.
Wow,
We
bro.
do those type of things quite a bit, but that's just an example of one.
Really interesting, and it also shows a lot of knowledge because I've been dealing with computers forever, and I didn't know you could steal sessions on Windows from the terminal specifically. This is something quite,
Yes.
interesting. Bro, I wanted to talk also a little bit about Polka House. You guys been working on that for quite a while. Can you explain us a little bit about it?
Okay. Yeah. So Polka House and Chaos DAO also they're two communities I helped to start. So back in like late 2020 to the early 2021, um, I put out a message on a forum and was like, hey, I want to chat. I don't see any like communities popping up on Polkadot. Like, I want to talk to people. And so this was back when Clubhouse was getting popular and like the beta was going on. And I was like, anybody want to start a Clubhouse and talk Polkadot? And some guy DM'd me and was like, yeah, let's do it. And then I didn't really hear from him for a couple of weeks. We exchanged handles and stuff, but I didn't hear from him. And then like I see him one day and he's in Clubhouse and he's got a bunch of people from Polkadot, and I was just like, okay, like let's do this. Let's have some talks. And so we started interviewing, just prominent people in the ecosystem, people like co-founders from these different L1s, people from Parity, and really got to know a lot of the projects. And it's kind of grown out of that. We of course don't use Clubhouse anymore, and we've kind of taken a break from doing the shows with Polka House, but we're going more to the event doing. They bought the event last year in Buenos Aires for Decoded, and we're potentially working on like a world tour. For when the time's right, it would involve hacker houses and job fairs and some different components to it. So we've been working kind of on the side with Parity on that. um, and it's just a kind of a community, that has a lot of the developers and different projects and stuff in it. And it's kind of the same with Chaos Style. That's kind of another thing that I like about Polkadot, our communities. A lot of times, communities in an ecosystem, they're kind of insular. They don't really, they see each other as competitors a lot of the time. Um, but there's kind of a camaraderie in Polkadot where all the ones and different projects are all working together, and it shows. And it's the same thing with Chaos Style. Like we have like 3 or 4 different wallet vendors in Chaos Style. Multiple, pretty much every L1 team has somebody inside Chaos Style. We've got and just everybody can get along, and we just want to see this grow and do cool things. Um, and Chaos kind of joking together. This guy, Alice Unzbob, he's Tommy from Mangata Finance. Had started this at the time. He was just a validator on Kusama, and he was like, "Hey, join my Discord, my validator Discord." Um, and it was like at the time I was like putting out some like scam warnings for projects. Like I did one on Brief, and what a joke that was. And that got his attention, and so he was like, "I wanted you to help me hunt scams and find and identify, bad actors in this ecosystem." Um, and then they kind of came up with this chaos style idea, and we kind of ran with it. Um, and I kind of spearheaded a lot of the uh, like just helping form it as an idea, because like people weren't sure, like, do we make this the thing? I was like, no, we should just do this out of good, and like do it as people that want to see this grow, see this ecosystem grow. So, we've taken that stance and have started to build a treasury. I think we have like 40K worth of assets that has all just been pretty much donated or given to us through validating and stuff. We have some community members that are validators, and they offer to run validators for us free of charge, or give us a piece of give us a commission on their earnings. Just some really great people that are in Chaos Style that help. And so we're, investing that into people and projects in the ecosystem. We've just like built a new governance bot. There's a guy, Nadraj, who is helping, put that bot together. Because in Polkadot, in Kusama, they've implemented this new governance 2.0. So they've gotten rid of a council. There's no like centralized governance anymore, and people have to vote up proposals or vote them down. And they've also implemented this idea called nomination pools. So you can give your stake. You can allow somebody else to have your governance votes for nomination. So Chaos has a nomination pool in Kusama, to help kind of push governance. And through that, so we've got this Discord bot now that allows us to see all the governance proposals, and we vote internally on them. Soon it will be forming our extrinsic so that we can make multi-sig calls through our peer proxy palette, and be able to execute governance on the fly. And we're going to give this tool away, and we want to build other stuff and do other things that help that ecosystem.
Really cool, really interesting. And I want to go back to security now, and I want to make you a question because it's something that I find to be really interesting, which is whatever you put out in the universe, you're gonna get it 10 times greater. I want to believe on that. Don't know if I do. Okay. And I want to talk about resilience because that also applies to job, right? To your work, the way you do your work, right? The energy you put in there. And being an auditor is really stressful. You need to really go back and read the function 10 times and maybe spend 20 hours over 20 lines of code. Where do you get the energy, bro, to put out this research?
Yeah, man. I think it's just my passion to do it. I mean, like I tell people, like do what you love. If you do what you love, you're going to be automatically passionate about it. When I hire people, I look for people that are just passionate. I don't like when I interview for pen testing and stuff. Like, I don't ask people to do whiteboards and get all crazy and like tell me some really esoteric answer to some question, or math riddle. I just want to know, like, are you doing this in your spare time? Like, is this what you're thinking about when you're not doing it for work? Because those are the people that I like. Those are the people that are just going to be tenacious. They're just going to go after it. Um, it's a big the resilience and mindset. I think are critical. Critical. Um, it doesn't matter. You see projects and stuff, and it's like, oh, this was audited by Trilobits. This was audited by Mist. This was audited by, SR Labs, or just really great companies. And you kind of, as an auditor, will think, oh, I'm never going to find anything. This huge team of talent, that are just rock stars. I've already looked over all this code. Like, there's just nothing going to be there. And it's most of the time not true because there's these assumptions you're making that nothing has been changed since those guys last looked at it, and that they ultimately had a finite amount of time and resources to spend on that code base. So always assume that everything's exploitable, and then prove yourself wrong. Don't make assumptions that something is safe. Make assumptions that it's not safe, and then prove that wrong.
Amazing,
So
bro. Amazing.
yeah.
I'm gonna open for questions, and while people think on decide on their questions, bro, who are the researchers you like today on the Ethereum community?
Oh man. Patrick D was a throwback from Security Epoch Zero. I think he's awesome. I mean, there's so many guys out there, like 5 out of 9, Reptiles. Um, I mean, shoot, I'm just drawing a blank. There's just so many people out there. Samson, Mudit, Gupta. I mean, Dan Guido, all the people from Trail of Bits, all the people Sigma Prime. There's just like great guys out there all over the place. It's and there's new ones coming up. Pashoff is a newer guy. He's killing it. The other Patrick, he's doing great stuff. Trust. I mean, like you could just pretty much turn your head anywhere and see just pads. I mean, it's cool.
Do you think on having some sort of auditing business in the future or coming up with some more content regarding security, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure definitely, as time moves on, we're definitely gonna, keep progressing. I'm now that kind of is forming up in substrate, I think we're gonna see a lot more of that. Another thing, regarding like Polkadot, so in Polkadot in the governance, they have this Polkadot Assurance Legion that's going up for proposal, and the idea is to fund through Treasury, to pay for audits of these L1s and critical pallets and stuff. Um, and initially, I got asked by a founder of another one of the L1s to if I wanted to be a curator on this. But at the time, they were only targeting like auditing firms as like the recipients of these of the funds for this. And I'm a believer in like these open audit competitions like C4 and Sherlock and stuff. And so I advocated for them to reach out to C4 and to see if maybe we could make a C4 platform Polkadot compliant. And so I reached out to Code Arena, and they were super receptive to it. And I reached back out to the Assurance Legion, the current one, and asked them, and it ended up working out. So Code Arena is going to support this Polkadot Assurance Legion with audit competitions for Polkadot, and we're gonna do some cool stuff there. I think so. That's definitely coming up.
That's amazing. And Open Sense will also support you guys. You better be sure of that. Dabrix, you have a question?
Yeah, hey Taylor. I'm actually Taylor and I used to I'm also from Poker House, and I'm one of the founders. So just wanted to say what's up. Yeah, I actually did have a question for you, Taylor. How do you think AI is going to affect the pen testing and security in general? How do you think these tools are going to maybe affect the efficiency, or what other types of effects will this new technology have on security in general?
Sure, sure. That's actually a good question. And so we need to kind of think about this. It's not really AI. It's a large language model. It's just basically a really good auto suggestion for the English language or whatever language it's outputting. But it's not really thinking. I mean, it's not. Um, like it will hallucinate a lot of results. And I mean, yeah, you can train the models and they'll eventually get a little bit better. But like if you give it something complex, it's just not going to understand nuance or context in general. I think that it's great as an augmenting tool. It's good at helping maybe explain something back to you or generating boilerplate. Like I think it's use the right tool for the job. Like there's definitely application to large language models and stuff, but I don't see it taking my job anytime soon. I just don't. It's, and the models that are created from it are only going to be as good as what they know. With offense, they're always evolving, always new attacks. So while there may be a potential to like find new novel attacks with pen testing, I mean with large language models, I don't really think it is. Um, but maybe like hooking something up to a fuzzer, I think that would have better results potentially.
What about like as the technology progresses? Because like I noticed there's I forgot the name of the company, but they're creating some sort of military AI applications
Oh
where
yeah, Palantir. Yeah, that's Palantir
Yeah,
doing it.
Palantir. Yeah, that's the one. Like, what like, what if Palantir has some sort of exploit where a malicious actor can take over Palantir? Like, what from that, looking at it from that angle, did you see any sort of issues there?
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of attack surface to a large language model, but it would really depend on how they have things set up. I mean, you have to train the model, and then you use that trained data model to generate your tokens. So you would have to like manipulate the model to then do your malicious thing potentially. But maybe not. I mean, this depends. I don't really have any experience with their product. I saw some pictures of it, but I don't know how much of that is actually like real or just like a mock-up. For all we know, it doesn't. I don't think we should rely on it. I don't think it's trustable data. Whenever I use it to do cogen or to do something, I mean, it's still is wrong a lot of times, and I have to correct or make it do the right thing. But it can definitely elevate you, I think, as an auditor. Just even generating like code comments or um, asking it to explain some crazy logic to you can maybe help out.
Are there any like additional attack surfaces that AI that like large language models have like introduced? Like I'm thinking maybe for the example of like say you have a model trained and then a malicious actor comes in and replaces that model with their own customized model, and you think it's going to output A, and instead it outputs B.
Yeah, I mean, all of that's totally potential if you can replace the model. In models, they're pickled too. A lot of like machine learning stuff is Python based, and so like inherently there are potential code execution vulnerabilities in just using a model that's Python based because it's all pickled serialized data. So be careful what models you use. You want to use legit ones.
I have a question here from Xavier. Do you use any kind of tooling to find bugs, or usually just reading the code manually? You do use tools. Can you share the tools?
Yeah, I think like I I do manual stuff, and then I also mostly use Foundry. I'm gonna write like a test and stuff. But yeah, Chisel, um, the debug in Forge, which has like the HEVM debugger, and I guess it's REVM now. The other tools like SimGrep, still use Slither. Play with um, some of the fuzzing, symbolic execution stuff like Mithril. Um, Kind of just depends, but yeah, a lot of like manual auditing too, going over the code base and just asking, does this make sense? Is this what they were expecting? Really, what they were trying? Is this what they were really trying to do, or is it something different?
Yeah, makes sense. Another question that I have here from Helitus: if you, even if AI gets really advanced, let's say in 20 or 30 years, do you think we're gonna trust on AI audits, or you think we're always gonna need a human in there?
Um, I think we'll always need a human. We don't really have AI. I mean, there's just it's not really AI. It's just outputting based on what it's been trained on, the data it's been trained on. So I think it's going to be quite a while before it would be guardrail free. There's just too many ways it can go wrong.
Amazing, bro. I think this is it. It was an amazing session. I don't know if people have more questions, guys. Any more questions? Bro, you have any closing thoughts? Any message you wanna leave to people that will hear this in the future?
I appreciate you for having me on. It's been fun.